Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Reserve Team podcast, your home of everything Australian and New Zealand football. My name is Branson Gibson. I am your host for today's episode as we pay special attention to the also-rans, the 6 teams that didn't quite make it into the A-League finals. Joining me tonight to take a look at those teams is Bill Brooks. Welcome back, Bill. How's it going, mate?
Yeah, good, Brad. Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
That's good, man. It's good to have you. So tonight we're going to be taking a look at the 6 teams who didn't make the finals. We'll have a look at who finished where. We've got some postseason awards to hand out as well. We'll take a look at some of the coaching situations. We'll have a look at our team of the season, and then later on we will dive in and have a very quick preview of the first week of the finals, which is coming up this weekend. Of course, that's going to be very exciting, mate. We've got a lot to go through, but let's take a look. Let's dive straight into it. So there was 6 teams this season who missed out on the finals. If we have a look at the table, in 7th place, just outside the final spots on by 1 point, was the Wellington Phoenix. In 8th, we had Western Sydney on 35 points. In 9th, the Perth Glory on 34. In 10th, we had Western United on 28 points. In 11th, we have Melbourne Victory on 19, and in 12th, we have the Newcastle Jets on 18 points. Now, at the time of recording, the Newcastle Jets have not played Melbourne City yet, so there is still the potential that the Jets could leapfrog the Victory and move off the bottom of the table. But Bill, when we have a look at the bottom 6 as a whole, what do you make of it?
It's an interesting one. There's definitely some teams that I would to pick to be there come the start of the season. I think, definitely looking at the likes of Wellington, only just missed out in the end on finals, but I guess it's been a hard season for them, sort of being away from home for probably 95% of the season has probably impacted. Western United, after the season they had last year, is a bit of a surprise to see them completely miss out on finals. But I don't know, it's an interesting bottom half of the table, and definitely, not what I would have picked, back in December when the season was starting up.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's dive into it. We'll start on a positive. Who do you think was the best team to not make the finals?
Well, I think it's a bit of an obvious one, but the team that probably was the closest in 7th, it was Wellington, I think, for me. Obviously, I think they had a rusty, sort of slow start to the season, but they really picked it up, and their run home has been fantastic. And the last, especially the last few weeks, they've to come only a point short. I think is a credit to them. I think they've been probably the best of the rest, really. Looking at it, especially this run in, anyways.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just trying to have a quick look. I think they were undefeated in their last 11 games leading up to the finals. I'll double check that because, as I said, that sounds pretty ridiculous. But they certainly finished the year pretty strongly. And heading into that last game, they were unlucky not to make it. Needed results to go their way, didn't. But that's okay. Who do you think was the biggest disappointment? You mentioned Western United, the Victory are another big name club down there. Western Sydney had a lot of pre-season hype. Who were you most disappointed in?
Yeah, for me, it's probably Western Sydney. You mentioned they had that pre-season hype. I thought at the time Carl Robinson was an amazing acquisition for them, and I thought that things looked really good. And I was actually sort of in the back of my mind thinking Western Sydney could have a really good season here. Things obviously haven't panned out quite the way they would have wanted. We'll obviously talk more about Carl Robinson down the track, but I think they're probably the team that I probably expected more from the most, let's say.
Yeah, well, I think for me, a team that you mentioned earlier was the biggest disappointment for me was Western United. We just saw they were in such a strong position. They beat Melbourne City. They were in the top 6, and then they went absolutely nowhere. They really just sort of fell off the face of the earth. They lost at least their last 5 games in a row. So that was a pretty, disappointing way to end the season. And then they end up in 10th, nowhere near the finals in the end. Which team do you think was better than expected?
It's a tough one, really, because we look at, teams that are probably down the wrong end of the table. It's hard to say that, you expected some teams to do so, as poorly as they did. But perhaps Perth, I don't know. In terms of where I sort of saw these teams sitting at the start of the season, a lot of them sort of haven't really, exceeded expectations in any way. But I guess maybe Perth are probably the team that I probably I guess, didn't expect to sort of perform. But I don't know. It's a weird one for me. I struggle to single out a team that I think did well in the bottom half of the table, if that makes sense. But yeah, I guess if I had to sort of single out a team, it'd probably be Perth. But I feel it's harsh on them at the same time.
Yeah, Perth are a good shout. At the start of the year, I thought that they would struggle as well. I thought their team was a little bit too old. I mean, they still missed the finals, but they showed a little bit more than I thought they were going to. The one that leaves out for me was the Wellington Phoenix. I thought that, having to spend the whole season more or less away from home, I thought that they were going to struggle. And we saw at the start of the year, they were on the bottom of the table early on in the season. So for them to really sort of turn it around in the latter parts of the year, I don't think 11 in a row is correct. I'm trying to double check, figure out exactly what that is. I know I said that before, but now not so certain that that's correct. We'll double check that. But anyway, we'll get there. So taking a look at the ladder as a whole now, what do you think separates the top six from the bottom six? Obviously points, but what do you think the big difference between a side that made finals like Adelaide or Macarthur is compared to the teams that just missed out like Wellington or the Wanderers?
I think probably the divisive factor for me has probably been the difference in quality in probably the defences of the teams. Because I think we sort of look at the teams in the bottom half and the teams in the top half. Both have quality attacking options. I think. You look at Wellington have got the likes of Davila, Hamed, Ben Wayne's emergence this season. Western Sydney have a variety of options in a Beanie. Acquired McDonald recently. Kamau's been decent this season. You go down, Fornaroli's an obvious for Perth. Diamante for Western United. There's some of the obvious standouts. And then you look at probably what splits them. It's probably the defences for me. I think, and sort of looking at goal differences sort of points that out as a pretty obvious way to sort of look at that. Obviously, victory with negative 29's not ideal, but in saying that, I'd say, that's probably what's split the two teams. They've just been leaked a couple of goals at times. And you think back to the start of the season when Perth and Western United played out that 5-4, ridiculous game. There's plenty of high scoring stuff, but they were just leaking goals. And the top sides haven't done that as much necessarily, but saying that as an Adelaide fan, our defence hasn't been brilliant all season either. So, but I just think perhaps the more consistent defences have perhaps helped get teams over the line in the top six.
I definitely agree. When you look at the goals against, I think the Wellington Phoenix conceded 34. They were the only team that had fewer goals conceded than a side that did go on and make the finals, and that was Macarthur. They'd conceded 36. But then if we look at the goals for stats, Wellington, Western Sydney, Perth, all had more goals than 5 of the 6 sides in the top 6. So they clearly, as you said, had no problem putting the ball in the back of the net. It was just keeping the ball out of their own goal. That seemed to be, the real difficult part. Easier said than done. But mate, we're going to take a look at a couple of the end of season awards as well. Taking a look at just the top 6. Just the bottom 6, excluding the top 6 from these awards. We're going to have a look at some of the awards that we can give out for the also-rans. The first one we're going to get to is the Golden Boot. Former Melbourne City player Bruno Fornaroli, obviously now with Perth Glory, he scored 13 goals. That was the most out of any side in the bottom 6. Hamed for Wellington, he came home with a flurry as well. He had 11 goals. Moving on, we had Bill, what did you make of Bruno Fornaroli's season?
Yeah, well, Bruno's obviously a quality player, and he's always exciting to watch. And that Perth side this year have been brilliant at attacking football. They've torn Adelaide United to shreds a couple of times, much to my dismay. But I think Bruno's been class. He usually is. On that note, you mentioned Tomer Hamed. I've got to say he quite surprised me in the end. Came out really well in the end. I thought watching him at the start of the season looked a bit slow. Wasn't sure how he was going to get his goals, but obviously he's, like you said, he's come home with that flurry. And while we were talking about Bruno, I think he's been quite impressive to come second in this group as well.
Definitely, and Mitch Duke is another big striker for Western Sydney. Another big name striker. For a club in the bottom 6 as well. Can't remember off the top of my head how many goals he scored, but he's another big name player who doesn't mind scoring goals. taking a look at the award for the most, the most assists, and there's not really much of a surprise here when we reveal this award winner in Alessandro Diamante. He is absolutely class. Is he? I mean, probably the most obvious person to win this award.
Yeah, I think it probably wouldn't have shocked me if even if you included the top 6 teams at the start of the season and we said who's going to get the most assists, if people had been saying Diamante, I wouldn't have been surprised. Um, I think probably Western United's one of their better players, obviously this season. So yeah, it doesn't shock me at all. Yeah, just another incredible season from him, backing up what he did in his first season in the A League.
And again, there was a number of notable players from teams in the bottom 6 who had quite a few assists as well. Alessandro Diamante, sorry. Oh my goodness, apparently that's the hardest word, hardest name in the world to pronounce. We'll get there in the end. Diamante, he had 10 assists. That did lead the entire league. We had Ulysses De Villa in equal third on 7. James Troisi, Neil Kilkenny also had 7 assists as well. And then Andy Keogh, bit of a surprise, had 6 for Perth Glory as well. So again, assists were easy to come by for players in the bottom 6, which is a little bit surprising. Turning our attention though to the goalkeepers, the most clean sheets. Now this was a tie between Oliver Sale from Wellington Phoenix and Daniel Margouche from Western Sydney. Which player do you think of the two, if you had to pick one, which one do you think had the better season?
I don't know. I guess if the way I sort of look at it is the perhaps it's in a weird way, bigger achievement for Ollie Sale. Just that in the way that he had to break through and earn his spot off of Marinovic in a way. And obviously Marinovic has probably struggled to find his way back into the team now. But the way I sort of see it is that Margouche had the opportunity from the start of the season, sort of unobstructed, I guess, to play in as that number one choice for Western Sydney, whereas Ollie Sale really had to earn his spot, and then from there he was very impressive again. So not to take away from Margouche, I think he's been incredible. Obviously, ex-Adelaide boy, so got plenty of time for him. But yeah, I think Ollie Sale's just been, for a bottom 6 keeper, has been phenomenal.
Yeah, definitely. It's always a difficult task for a backup goalkeeper to, usurp the starter and sort of really make that position their own. Make that number one spot their own. And if we have a look at not just the clean sheet stats, they both had 5. Oliver Sale had a higher save percentage with 79.1, which was the second best in the league overall. Andrew Redmayne was the highest with 81.5, but Oliver Sale had a higher save percentage. So if you had to try to split the two, if we're going purely based on statistics, that's probably the way to split them. Taking a look at the coaches, though, because it was a little bit rough for coaches in the bottom 6. So we're going to give out the I Still Have My Job award. That goes to 3 managers in Ufuk Talay, Carl Robinson, and Richie Garcia. Bill, are you surprised that any of those 3 still have their jobs? And of the 3 managers who did get sacked, do you think any of them were hard done by? Or, sorry, and in the case of Craig Dean's stepped down, maybe not sacked, but yes.
Yeah, it's been an interesting managerial situation at the bottom sort of half of the table. I feel like definitely the conversation is there to be had about probably Carl Robinson and maybe Richie Garcia, but I feel like perhaps Ufuk Talay probably a bit harsh to be winning the I Still Have My Job award in terms of the position they were in, having to come over and to spend most of this season away from home. To be only a point short of finals, I think is actually a pretty good achievement considering all things considered. Yeah, I feel like he's probably a little bit stiff. I don't think he's got too much cause for concern going, sort of postseason. But I think the big one for me is Carl Robinson. Like I mentioned earlier, the hype around Western Sydney in pre-season, and I think on paper they've probably got one of the best squads in the league. I don't think for whatever reason it hasn't seemed to have worked out so far. To be honest, personally, I'd love to see him get another crack next season and see if he can right his wrongs. I don't know what the sort of inner fraternity at Western Sydney are thinking, but that's just the way I am with it. But yeah, and obviously the big shock is Mark Rutten parting ways with Western United after the season they had last year. I don't think anyone saw this coming at the start of the season, but their run home's not been great. But yeah, I don't know. I guess that's the big shock in terms of managerial departures, but it's been an interesting sort of merry-go-round, I guess, really this season.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll come back to Mark Rudan in a moment. I want to talk a little bit more about Carl Robinson. The pressure's certainly on him. There was a lot of expectation. Western Sydney Wanderers as well. They're a club that has a reputation for a high coach turnover as well. So it'll be interesting to see how long they want to stick with him. Obviously, every time you change coach, you have to sort of hit the reset button. Are they willing to do that again? We've seen, across the footballing world, it takes, a bit of time to build a squad. And Robinson was able to add a couple of big pieces in, Abini and Agarkovic, a couple of big players that he specifically targeted and was able to go and bring across. We saw, Robinson out doing the rounds on soccer Twitter. Hard to tell if that was, tongue-in-cheek or if it was serious. But is it finals or bust for Robinson next year, do you think?
I feel like they want to be setting those targets pretty early on next season for him. I'd like to think he'll stay because obviously it's been hard for the Wanderers since Popovic left. They haven't really been able to find the right sort of coach they've been able to get to stick around and fit and make things work. But I'd say you're probably on the money there. He probably has to make finals next season. I think this season it's a bit harsh. He's still bringing a lot of different pieces together to fit into the squad that he wants. Obviously, Ugarkovic was still only a recent signing in this weird no transfer window A-League season that's been going on. But I think if he can get the things he wants right come pre-season, I think the expectation surely would be finals or bust for Western Sydney.
Talking about Mark Rudan, who you mentioned before, he was, of course, sacked this week, it was announced that he and the club had mutually agreed to terminate his contract. What surprised you the most about that move? Do you think it was the right call for Western United to make?
I don't know. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because obviously, they worked pretty hard to get him when they came to the league and get him from Wellington to come across, and they would place their trust in him in bringing across all the players he wanted, and the likes of Curto came along with him from Wellington and Durante as well, that sort of thing. But it's an interesting one. I'm looking at their run home. I'm kind of not surprised in a way. It's not been great, but I still think, I don't know. I feel like in a weird way he was the right man for the job. He was doing things right, and obviously last season he was so great. I feel like I don't know. It's easy to say that because coaches are sacked so easily nowadays in football. But I feel like on the merits of last season, to come as close to the grand final as they did, I feel like it was a bit harsh. But look, maybe they want to go in a new direction, and all power to them for making that call and following through with it if they find the right coach and make things work. So.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting one with Rudan because, in my opinion, I think there were bigger issues at the club than him, or maybe not bigger, but there certainly a number of equal issues. I don't think the coach was the thing that needed to be addressed the most. I think their reliance on older players sort of came back to bite him. Diamante, he was fantastic, but he spent a fair bit of time on the sideline. They were too reliant on Besart Berisha, who is, I don't know how old he is off the top of my head, but quite old. He was their top goal scorer last year. If you're relying on him to be your top goal scorer again and get 20 goals, then you're in trouble. And then Durante, as you said, coming across from Wellington, he's pretty old too. Their lack of identity, I think, their last 8 games they played each at different venues as well. So they were touring all over the place. They had no wins in their last 9. They conceded 24 goals as well, which is amazing for a team that plays 3 centre-backs and 2 defensive midfielders as well. Sort of park the bus there and still ship 24 goals in 9 games. So, I mean, Rudan's form to end the season is certainly, sackable, but I think there are larger issues at play at Western United. So we're going to it'll be interesting to see how they go next year and what sort of direction they try to go in. A team that we haven't really spoken about in the bottom 6 much yet, the Melbourne Victory. How surprised were you to see them where they were? They started off with Grant Brebner. He got the sack after the 7-0 Melbourne derby loss to Melbourne City. What do you make of their campaign? Because it was pretty darn awful.
Well, it's an odd one for me because I must admit I sat down first week of the A-League season and I was watching them against the Raw, and I was actually texting my mate and I was just thinking, like, you know what? I like the look of this Victory team. They look, and it's a hard thing to admit as an Adelaide fan. I thought they looked really, really good in that first half. The likes of McManaman looking really good, and I was really impressed with Falami and Brimmer. And then they just sort of got blown away in the end, and just seemed to be sort of a bit of a precursor for the rest of their season. But it was a weird one because, like I said, I watched that first 45 against Brisbane, and I was very impressed. And I thought, here we go. Victory's starting to get back to where they used to be, which as an Adelaide fan is kind of hard to stomach. But no, it's been a real shock for me. I think they've got to take some solace in they did get it right with Jake Brimmer. I think he's been a brilliant acquisition. But I think probably, one of the few shining lights in what's probably been a bit of a dull season for Victory fans.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, I suppose, when it comes to the Melbourne Victory. Rudy Gestede, what did you make of him? Is he the worst marquee player in recent memory?
Gee, he'd have to be up there, wouldn't he? Hard to say. Recency bias definitely suggests that he'd be up there, but I don't know. I didn't see enough from him personally, and I thought, they didn't really miss him at times when they didn't play with him. So it was hard to see what he added to that Victory side because he didn't, from memory, I don't think he scored many goals. I couldn't tell you how many he scored off the top of my head. But yeah, it was hard to see, sort of figure out what they missed or what he brought to the side, I guess.
Yeah, well, he scored. Sorry, the reason I laugh was because I read the number of goals that he scored. He scored 2 goals in 18 appearances. This is from the man who said at the start of the season that he's going to be even better than Ola Toivonen. So I don't think he did a lot of. I don't think he did himself a lot of favors. In setting up that kind of expectation and sort of, all you're doing there is setting yourself up for failure. I think he failed. I think we can say he certainly failed. And just for reference as well, Adama Traore scored 3 goals, so he had more goals than just their main striker. I think the other thing for the Victory as well was they had their worst ever season in 2019-2020, and then they went and backed it up with their even worse season this year. I think it's their lowest point total at the end of the season. There is still a chance that they could, finish bottom and win. Do you win the wooden spoon? Win the wooden spoon for the first time in their history. It's also the first time in their history as well that they've missed the finals in back-to-back seasons. They lost 6-0 to Melbourne City. If that wasn't bad enough, a week later, next time they faced them, they lost 7-0. It really just sort of went from bad to worse. I sort of felt, sorry for Grant Brebner as well. He was the first manager of the season to get sacked. There was articles in the off-season saying how he didn't want the job, that they were approaching him. They were trying to get him to be the coach, but he didn't want it. Ended up taking it anyway. So, it was pretty darn awful year for the Victory. It'll be interesting to see what kind of direction they go in as well. 2 more teams that we're going to talk about. Perth Glory, Garcia. What did you make of his performance as a coach, and then sort of Perth as a whole?
Yeah, I said this at the start of the season. My thought on Perth was that they were a bit tack heavy and were probably going to leak goals. And I don't think I was too far off in saying that. And I think that's probably been the biggest flaw with Garcia is he's not probably always been able to find a way to sort of stem the goals conceded. That said, though, he's made. I mean, he's got a good squad to work with. He's made it work with Fornaroli and Diego Castro, some quality attacking players. And I've really been impressed with the emergence of Carlo Armiento this season at the A-League level. I think he's definitely found the best in Carlo Armiento, which is credit to him. I just think it'll be interesting next season to see how he sort of stems that flow of goals in the back of the Glory net.
Definitely. And, talking about aging players as well, Fornaroli's getting a little bit older. Kilkenny, we know, has departed the club. Andy Keogh's still floating around. So it'll be interesting to see. They've got good young players like Armiento, as you said, Economides. So, players like that. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do to sort of retool as well. Talking about the Newcastle Jets as well, because I think they're the one team that we haven't really mentioned. They had a strange year where I remember back in the day when they were in the top 6, start of the season, it was a little bit to do with the fact that they'd played more games than other teams. But earlier in the season, I think they were 6, but they were in a finals position, and there was a little bit of substance about them, a little bit of excitement. That sort of fell away, and they now sit on the bottom of the league as well. What do you make of their campaign? Are they heading in the right direction? Craig Dean's announced that he's stepped down as manager. There's rumours that Pappas is going to step in. That's not been confirmed as well. What direction are the Jets heading in?
It's kind of hard to tell standing from the outside looking in, isn't it? Yeah, well, they had that bright start and things look good. With I think obviously Valentino Ewell looked great and looked like maybe Western United have made a mistake letting him go. Didn't seem to find a way to get the best out of Roy O'Donovan on his return. Obviously I think he's a quality player and he's good enough to do better than he did this season at A-League level. That's for sure. But yeah, it's hard to put a bit of a mark on where the Jets are at for me. I think there's sort of still a lot of unanswered questions for them and as to where they go from here. That's for sure. The future's definitely uncertain for me.
Yeah, one of the big things that I sort of noticed when I was looking at the Jets and taking a look at some of their stats this season, their home form was absolutely diabolical. They only had one win at home this season. Funnily enough, though, that win came against Melbourne City, the premiers. So, I mean, if you're going to beat anyone, may as well beat the best team, right? But their one win at home, what was it? Western United, Melbourne Victory, Western City and Wellington, all fellow bottom 6 sides. They all had as many wins in Newcastle as Newcastle themselves had. So a little bit of a worrying trend, in football everyone talks about, making your home stadium a fortress, a difficult place to play. Bit of a cliche, but definitely not a cliche that the Jets wanted to get around this season. All right, Bill, one final question for you before we move on. Which of these sides in the bottom 6 do you think is in the best position, has the best platform to build on to go ahead and make the top 6 next season?
Yeah, it's tough. There's 2 sort of standouts for me, and there's 4 clubs where I'm not entirely sure where the sort of pass mark is for next season or where they go from here. But I think the 2 standouts are Wellington. Obviously, they only just missed out in the end on finals this year. I think they're primed to go again. Presumably, they'll be able to play at home for the actual full season this time round. So I think that's an obvious one to sort of say they were already in a good position. They were just in tough circumstances that were outside of the football field that they couldn't really control. So I think that's an obvious one to sort of say they can definitely contend next year. And then the other one, I think, is for Western Sydney. The pressure's going to be on Carl Robinson. I think he's largely got the squad together now. Maybe just another preseason under his belt is what they need. A couple more additions maybe in the off season. So I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see. Definitely those 2 sides, I think, are the big question marks as to they definitely can push next year.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting with Wellington because I agree. I think they're the team that probably has the best platform, but we already know that they're going to lose Ulysses Davia. We already know that it's been confirmed that he's going to MacArthur. They might lose Hemed as well. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens, how they're able to replace those players. We've seen teams like Western Sydney and the Melbourne Victory recently really sort of struggle to nail those those international signings. So there always seem to be a little bit hit or miss. So Wellington had hit on a couple in Davia and Hemed. So it'll be interesting to see if they can replicate it as well. I know I said I only had one more question, but I actually have another. On the flip side, we've done the positive, now let's do the negative. That's always more fun. Which squad do you think is in the need of the biggest reset?
I don't know. It's an interesting one. I think Western United are kind of obvious in the fact that they're going to have a new coach anyways, and we already mentioned the aging squad they have. I think, obviously Durante's retiring now. Barisha, we mentioned earlier, was already getting older. Diamante's, 37, 38, I want to say. I think that's one of the standouts for me anyways. I think we sort of touched on earlier their aging squad, and I think with new coach and that factored in is going to be obvious. And the other one's obviously going to be Victory, who've already confirmed Tony Popovich coming in. Obviously, it's not been good enough for Melbourne Victory standard this season, and I think they're going to have to find a way to pull the plug and reset. So I think there'll definitely be some big changes come the off season for Victory.
Yeah, definitely. I think with Western United, it's interesting because midway through the season, it didn't look like they were going to need a major reset. Those aging players you knew would have to be replaced, but it seemed like, they might have made a couple of tweaks or a couple of ups. But that's now gone into full-blown reset. The Victor as well, having a big-name coach like Popovich, that's going to be really interesting to see what they can do. Obviously, one of the biggest clubs in the country, they've got plenty of pulling power. They've got a big-name coach there, a big-name coach who has shown, though, he's willing to depart in a hurry at the drop of a hat. So whether or not that's a draw card or not, it's going to be interesting to see. I think I saw that on Twitter that apparently Popovich had already told a bunch of current Victory players before the season ended that their services won't be required next year. So maybe he's got big plans. It's going to be interesting to see what happens next season. I'm already looking forward to it, mate. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be great. But mate, that pretty much sums up our wrap for the bottom six. We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to jump into our Hall of Fame nominations. All right, taking a look at the Hall of Fame results from last week, we had two nominations. The first was Mark Milligan, who, of course, announced his retirement from professional football. He played his last ever A-League game for Macarthur. He went head-to-head with the Wollongong Phoenix as well. Wellington, of course, playing in Wollongong for almost the entire A-League season. They didn't make the finals, but I'll tell you what, Bill, they have made the reserve team Hall of Fame. That's got to serve as at least some consolation with a whopping 79.3% of the vote. I mean, no disrespect to Mark Milligan. He's had a fantastic career, part of the Socceroos golden generation, but the Wollongong Phoenix have absolutely emphatically powered their way into the reserve team Hall of Fame with an emphatic result. So congratulations to Wellington. Congratulations to Wollongong. They didn't make the finals, but I think this is a more illustrious prize, I think. Bill, what do you think?
If it's a consolation for the Knicks, I don't know what is. So, you've got to look at silver linings, and I don't think silver linings come much better than this. So, up the Knicks.
That's it. I don't think any other A-League club is in our Hall of Fame anyway. So, they're the first ones in there. So, well done to them. But we're going to jump straight into our Hall of Fame nominations for this week. And Bill, you've actually got an undefeated record when it comes to Hall of Fame nominations. You're just cruising along at 100% success rate. Who are you going to nominate this week, mate?
Well, it's easy to be 100% when you've done one and you've been lucky enough to win one. I think I might be in a bit of trouble this week, but this one's a little bit. You kind of had to be there, but Adelaide United versus Western Sydney, last home game of the regular season for us. In there in the Red Army. Now, I don't know if everyone knows the backstory behind it, but we had, a large portion of the good core active supporters went across, obviously, to the Melbourne Victory game. Victoria's in lockdown. So the regulations were, while, the people could be out and about in the public, potentially, all these people that were a large part of the Red Army, they actually couldn't come to what the class is like COVID-safe events. So they couldn't come to the A-League games. So the Army was largely gutted for the two home games against Sydney and Western Sydney. But I thought it was really special that we had, some people really pull up and start chanting and singing. But it's worth noting that there was this one kid, must have been 10, 12, 11, 12 years old, and he was on the drums for the full 90 against Western Sydney Wanderers, leading chants, banging along. And I just think, how good is that? And I think that gets my nomination for this week. So full credit to him, I say.
A young capo in the making, by the sounds of things. A very good nomination, mate. We'll put it up on the Twitter poll. We'll see how it goes. My nomination, though, is topical. It ties in with some breaking news. As we've been recording this podcast, while we've been recording, it has officially been confirmed by the Celtic Football Club that Ange Postecoglou will be the manager of Celtic. Of course, there's been a lot of rumours, a lot of speculation. We've heard that it was almost a sure thing that he was going to Celtic, but as of 14 minutes ago, Celtic officially unveiled Ange Postecoglou as their new manager. So huge news, not exactly a secret anymore, is sort of out there for a week, but that ties in nicely to my Hall of Fame nomination in honour of Ange, getting a huge gig at Celtic. I want to nominate him and his shirt, the shirt that he wore specifically when he was the manager of the Socceroos against the UAE during, I think it was a World Cup qualifier Actually, I don't know what game it was. His sweaty shirt that he wore against the UAE in the Middle East, it's iconic. There's some great photos. He has the button-up shirt. He's got the collar and everything, and he's just sweating through it. He's got the white shirt. The heat's got him. The humidity's got him, but he doesn't care. So I just think that as far as images of Socceroos coaches go, that is an iconic one. Maybe not for the best of reasons, but it's a bit of an infamous one on soccer Twitter, and of course it ties in nicely to him getting his new gig at Celtic. I don't think the weather in Scotland will lend itself to him sweating that much. I wouldn't have thought, but I mean, who knows? Who knows?
That might have factored into why he took the job. Maybe he just didn't want another sweaty shirt, So
That's it.
all
That's
power to
it.
him for thinking, it's all that outside the box thinking that might have helped him get over the line in the Celtic fraternity.
Yeah, exactly. He's got his tie on as well in the photo. It's absolutely fantastic. Very sweaty. But that is my nomination, Ange Postecoglou's sweaty shirt versus the Red Army 12-year-old drummer Capo. The poll will be put up on social media, up on our Twitter page. You can vote and have your say as well. But, mate, we're going to jump back into our discussion of the bottom six teams. All right, Bill. So earlier on, we talked about the teams a bit more holistically in their seasons and their performances. We talked about the coaches, but now we're going to turn our attention to the players. You and I have had a think. We've had a mull. We've trawled through some stats, and we have come up with our best 11 players from teams who missed out on the finals. You can see them up on our graphics there as well, but we're going to talk through it. Starting at the back with the goalkeeper, we have both gone for Oliver Sale. What did you make of his season, mate?
Yeah, I thought, obviously we sort of touched on it earlier, but I thought that Ollie Sale was fantastic. Like we said, broke in, took Marinovic's spot in the end, and never, sort of, I guess, set sail from there. He never really seemed to look back, and I thought it was phenomenal. And obviously, I think you sort of Margush and Matt Acton were sort of honourable mentions in the end, but I think for me, Sale takes a cake, and I thought it was fantastic all through his when he broke into the side until the end of the season.
Definitely another honourable mention as well that I want to throw out there is Ryan Scott for Western United as well, because he did a similar thing where Curto was the number one, Curto got injured, Scott stepped in, and he had what I think was the best performance this season by a player who used to be a bricklayer. So I thought he was similar to Sale. He didn't quite do it over as long a period of time, but when we're talking about honourable mentions, I think he deserves a shout out as well. He has re-signed with Western United for next year as well, so that'll be interesting to see what happens there. Taking a look at the back four, we'll start at left back. You've gone for Connor Payne, sorry. I've gone for Sam Sutton. What was your reasoning behind Connor Payne there?
Yeah, it was tough for me. I think we sort of spoke a little bit off air about how, but we've got that divide between probably considering defensively the difference between the top and bottom half of the table, to then go and pick out defenders for a bottom half team of the season is a little bit tough to do at times. But I thought Connor Payne, I've been impressed with him transitioning to, obviously he played as a bit of a left wing back, and then he's sort of become more of part of a back four at left back now from being previously a winger. I think that transition's actually, it ended up turning out pretty well for him, and he's been very impressive at times. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it was a bit tough for me to sort of single someone out, but I ended up edging Connor Payne through for me. So yeah.
Very nice. Moving on to the centre-back pairings, we've got Nikolai Topor-Stanley and Ziggy Gordon for you. I've gone for Stephen Taylor and Darryl Lockman. Nikolai Topor-Stanley, bit of a stalwart when it comes to the A-League. I think he's played in every single game for the Newcastle Jets so far this season. Ziggy Gordon as well. What did you make of his season, at the new club?
Tough one for me, Nikolai Topor-Stanley. I very nearly went Stephen Taylor as well. But looking on the size of it, I kind of thought for a team of the season, I felt I had to pick someone who played a bit more than Stephen Taylor did. But that's not to discredit him, because he was brilliant when he did play. So, I think Nikolai Topor-Stanley, he's just consistent. Yes, Newcastle didn't have a great season, but he always, seems to turn up every week and try and give his all. So I think that consistent effort, turn up, and he's just a stalwart of the league. I think now, deserves some recognition, so fair play to him. And then, looking at Ziggy Gordon, been a bit different for him this year. He's had to adapt to being part of a back three as opposed to the back four he was playing in at the Mariners. But I think, sort of down that right side of the three, I think he's done a brilliant job. and he's looked pretty comfortable there all season. So I'm, credit to him as well, and I think that's why I sort of edged him through in my team in the end.
Yeah, for me, I went for Stephen Taylor. I thought he was instrumental when he returned to Wellington, being a part of that 11-game unbeaten streak. He has recently re-signed, I believe, with the Wellington Phoenix for next season as well. So a bit of a cult hero. Just his wealth of experience as well, having played in the Premier League. He's just such a big presence in the back for Wellington. I thought he had a very good season with them. And we were talking about teams who have shipped a lot of goals as well. A bit of a tricky one with defenders. I've gone for a pairing at centre back and then right back. Darryl Luckman from Perth and Jason Guerrier as well. We spoke about Perth and how they conceded a whole bunch of goals. So a little bit of an interesting one there. But I was just impressed with both of their seasons. At right back, though, you've gone for Russell. What was your reasoning behind him there?
Yeah, Terry Russell. For me, this team's in a back four in this team of the season, but I think he's excelled at that role at right wing back sort of this season. Obviously, the Wanderers haven't quite gotten where they wanted to, and probably his exploits have been a bit more sort of transitional in a transitional sense than more necessarily always as a defender. But I think what he offers Western Sydney, not only in defence but also going forward, I think has been phenomenal. So.
Moving into the midfield as well, we've got two players the same there. We've both gone for Cameron Delvin and Jake Brimmer as well. We're on the same page there. What impressed you the most about their seasons this year?
Cameron Devlin for me, he just seems like he just controls the tempo so well for Wellington, and I think it's no secret that he's been a big part of their successes in getting so close to finals as the back end of the season. I think when he's on the ball, he just sort of, like I said, dictates the play for Wellington. And I think he's a big part of sort of their metronome and what keeps them moving and ticking over as a side. So that's why he sort of got in for me. And then I looked at Jake Brimmer, and I think obviously he was, like I mentioned earlier, he was sort of a bit of a shining light in a dull season for Victory. I think 5 goals, I believe, and I'm not sure how many assists he ended up registering, but I think he was definitely one of the more positive signings for them, and I think he was a good find, and they've done well converting him across from bringing him across from Glory and implementing them into their system. So I think he was a good get, and I think he's done well this season in a side that's really struggled.
Yeah, definitely 5 goals and 5 assists for Jake Brimmer as well. I just think that these two players are very exciting young players. They're both 23 years old. They're both great to watch. I like how you mentioned, Brimmer being able to make the transition from Perth to the Victory, and we've seen him really sort of get that chance to break through as well. With Cameron Delvin, we've seen him transition, not this year, but he came from Sydney FC and has really burst into the Wellington Phoenix squad and has been able to sort of solidify his spot there as a regular starter. Looking at the other slot in the midfield, I've gone for a bit of a defensive focus in Graham Dorrans in a defensive midfield role. Again, similar to Stephen Taylor, I just think his experience is immense. And I think we mentioned briefly how Western Sydney have a little bit of a hit and miss track record when it comes to international slots, and I think he has been a big hit for them. Your selection as well has certainly been a big hit. You've got Diamante as your attacking midfielder. I mean, hard not to put him in your squad, eh?
Yeah, exactly right. Started thinking about this team of the season for the bottom half, and I went, well, one of the first names on the team sheet, Alessandro Diamante. I mean, could almost not put him in. We spoke earlier about his assist record, and he's just been phenomenal since he's come to the A-League. But yeah, I think hard again not to put him in this season. He's always just there and thereabouts when Western United are doing something right.
Again, looking at the front three, we've got 2 similar players in there. We've got Bruno Fornaroli, who, of course, was the winner of our Bottom 6 Golden Boot Award. He was fantastic up the front. And then we've both gone for Ulysses De Villa as well. What do you make of De Villa's season, and how important was he to the Phoenix?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, he's a quality player, and, obviously heading over to MacArthur now will be interesting to see how they got on without him. And I think we'll probably see just how important he was to Wellington probably when he's not playing for them anymore. But obviously, we spoke earlier about how he's such a key player for the Knicks, and he's been phenomenal this season. But, it's worth mentioning that, obviously didn't score that penalty against Perth Glory, and, could be a very different scenario had he scored that, and they might have been in finals So it's a tough one, really. But I think it was a bit of a no-brainer to put him in the end. But yeah, what if, I guess, is the big question for him with that penalty. But yeah.
I feel so sorry for him for that penalty because, like, when you put it like that, you look at that penalty. He scored 2 this year. He missed 1. That was the one that he happened to miss in, one of the biggest spots of the year, really. So pretty unfortunate because he's just such an important player to Wellington. And if he's not in their squad, I don't know if they're even in that position to be close to making the finals anyway. So it's sort of unlucky that he's the one who had to miss the penalty when he plays such a vital role in Wellington being as good as they were. He had 7 goals and 7 assists as well. I went for Bruce Kamau. I thought he had a pretty darn good season as well for Western Sydney. There's talks of him going overseas as well. He had 9 goals for the Wanderers, which was a pretty darn good return, I thought, for a player who didn't necessarily garner a lot of attention, I don't think. He sort of just went about his business a little bit quietly. Again, maybe I'm just not in the right Western Sydney circles as a Melbourne City fan, but he just sort of seemed to be a little bit understated for me. But I thought he had a fantastic season. The last player that you've got in your best 11 is Armiento, a player we spoke about earlier. What impressed you the most about his season, mate?
Yeah, I think it was nice to see Carlo break onto the scene. He was there and thereabouts for Adelaide United a couple of years ago. That probably plays into my thinking a little bit as an Adelaide boy. But I just think it was really nice to see him get that opportunity, and he's done really well this season. He's been very impressive as a different dimension for Perth going forward. Obviously, they've got Castro, they've got Fornaroli, they've got Keogh. We all know what they can do, but I think to get that different dimension out of Armiento, I think was really special, and I was very impressed with him this season. But I've got to say, Bruce Kamau, credit to him, it's been a good season. I think I'm with you there. It's been a little bit under the radar how well he's gone this year, but it was Carlo Armiento for me. I just think, like I said, that different dimension for Perth was really, really nice to see.
Definitely. Well, that is those are our 2 best 11s. Feel free to hit us up on Twitter. Let us know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with any of our selections as well. Let us know who you think should be in those best 11s for teams that did not make the finals, the best 11 of teams in the bottom 6. A couple of more honourable mentions, players who didn't quite make the cut in our squads. Mitch Duke. He's off on Socceroos duty. He didn't make the squad. We've got Reno Piscopo. He missed out as well. And Diego Castro, who you just mentioned, he didn't quite get into either of our best 11s either. So interesting to see there. But as we said, guys, take a look as well. Let us know who your best 11 is and hit us up in the comments below or on social media. Bill, mate, that pretty much brings us to an end of our sort of wrap up and our review and our discussion points of teams who didn't make the finals. But, mate, that's not the end of the show because now we get to turn our attention to the actual finals. We're looking at the top 6 now because this weekend, coming up, we have 2 big games. Our first elimination finals on Saturday night. We have the 3rd place Central Coast Mariners taking on 6th place Macarthur FC, 7:05 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time at Central Coast Stadium. Mate, this is going to be a huge one. What are you most looking forward to about this game?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting clash, this one. Obviously, Central Coast were looking like nobody could beat them at the start of the season. Since then, we've seen that they can be beaten. It'll be interesting, but Macarthur, I don't know, it's a tough one for me because obviously they only just made finals in the end. Don't think they've beaten the Mariners yet. So it's going to be an interesting test for them. But there's quality there, and if the likes of Derbyshire and Tommy Orr and Markel Sushayeta can have a good game, then I think anything can happen for them. The reality is form goes out the window in finals. So just to put the old cliche in there, but I think that's the reality of it. Anything can happen in this game. I think Central Coast will get up. I don't think they're going to let all their hard work this season go to waste now. I think they're going to get the better of Macarthur, but it promises to be an interesting clash. So yeah, can't wait.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to just seeing a rocking Central Coast Stadium as well. We saw it for a couple of games earlier in the season as well. They were able to draw massive crowds, and it was just really fantastic to see. Obviously the Mariners have been what should we say? Disappointing in recent times. I think they had 3 consecutive bottom place finishes as well. So, I mean, it's pretty remarkable the fact that they were able to finish in third. They went from bottom of the league to third place. It sort of loses a little bit of the gloss because they were on top of the league for so long for the first half of the season. But the fact that they were able to finish third, in particularly, as you said, when they sort of stalled towards the end and it looked like they might drop away, to then rebound and finish where they did is a fantastic achievement. This one, I think in the regular season, the Mariners actually beat MacArthur all 3 times they played. So whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. Like, they've got the runs on the board, but maybe MacArthur, having lost 3 times to the Mariners, have figured a trick out. So it'll be interesting to see, because on paper, MacArthur look like a better team. Matt Derbyshire, as you said, 14 goals, the second most in the league this season. But, the Mariners, they've been punching above their weight all year. So hopefully, for the sake of the league, I think they can get over the line. I'm looking forward to that game. It's going to be an absolute ripper. Saturday night at 7:05 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So what's your score prediction for this one, mate?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I think the Mariners will pull through. I can't see them stopping MacArthur from scoring, but I definitely see them getting them better. I think it'll be a tight, caging counter, so I'm going 2-1 for this one.
I'm
2-1
going
the Mariners, sorry.
I'm going 2-1 to the Mariners as well. I reckon Matt Derbyshire will score in the first half to give MacArthur the lead. I reckon Matt Simon will bring the Mariners level in the 60th minute before Alu Kuol comes off the bench in the 89th minute and heads home to send the Central Coast Mariners fans home happy. You've heard it here. That's don't even bother watching the game. That's what's going to happen. There we go. The next game we're talking about, Sunday afternoon, another big one. We've got the 4th place Brisbane Roar taking on your boys, 5th placed Adelaide United, 3:05 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time at Moreton Daily Stadium on Sunday afternoon. What are you expecting from this one? Do you think the Reds have a good chance away from home, or is it going to be a tough ask?
I'm nervous. I won't lie. Definitely nervous. I think we've definitely been exposed on the road a couple of times this season, and we've shown that we've played our best football at home. So I was always really hoping that if we made finals, we'd at least get one home final, so we could sort of get things going and start finals in the right way. But I think it's a real worry now that we're on the road. Obviously, Brisbane are a quality side, so I don't know. It's a tough one for me. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not overly optimistic. I think Brisbane might get the better of us, but it was. I think Robbie Cornswaite and Daniel Garb put it pretty well in their podcast this week. They mentioned that that on their day, Adelaide look like they can beat anyone. They've already beaten Melbourne City, and Sydney, sorry, this season, as well as Central Coast. So on their day, they can beat anyone as long as the likes of Tommy Urich, Craig Goodwin, and Ben Halloran can perform for us up front, and we don't concede too many. Like, anything can happen. But yeah, for me, I'm on the nervous side, and I think we could be in trouble.
I can feel the nerves coming through. Don't worry, as a City fan, mate, in 2 weeks' time, when we go for our semi-final, I'll be in exactly the same boat. You mentioned that you wanted Adelaide United to have a home final. Unfortunately, they don't. But at one stage, it looked like they were not a sure thing, but almost a sure thing to get a home final. What do you think was the big slip up there for Adelaide to drop down and, honestly, almost miss the finals altogether?
Yeah, well, ironically, obviously we had some terrible results on the road, but I think ironically it was a couple of the home games in the run-in that sort of cost us in the end. We sort of prided ourselves on making Hindmarsh a bit of a fortress, but I think we drew with Wellington at home. We had a really frustrating draw against Western United at home, where we had I can't remember who was sent off for Western United, but we had a man advantage for, I believe, 60 minutes, and it was 1-1, 1-1 or whatever it was. I can't remember now. Oh my god! But definitely needed to kill that one, but didn't take the chances. And then it was West Sydney at home again the other night. And look, another man down. Didn't take advantage of having that extra man on the pitch, and I think those 2 results for me were big killers of that, and then also the draw at home against Wellington. So I think the run in, we just let things slip a little bit.
Yeah, well, talking about that Western United game, it was Victor Sanchez who was sent off in the 36th minute. Mo Torre then got sent off in the 94th minute, right at the end as well. That Western Sydney game, that was absolutely crazy as well because it was a 2-2 draw. But I mean, from a neutral point of view, you should have lost. Who was it? Scott McDonald was through on goal, had a 1-on-1, and I think it was Mutch had the ball after a turnover, wide open net, and couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. So despite having a player advantage, you were lucky in a way to hold on for a draw. If we take a look though at the last time the Raw and Adelaide met, it was Adelaide who got the job done 1-0. It was, of course, at Highmarsh though. Would you feel more confident about Adelaide getting the job done if this game was being played at Highmarsh?
100%. I think obviously it's been weird though. The last couple of home games, obviously lost to Sydney, the draw the other night. We've not been our best at home, but I just think on that day at home we can beat anyone. And I think I spoke in the season preview for Adelaide United this season about how I think when Coopers is full and rocking, I think it's one of the best football experiences in the country. So that's, but like I said, I think 100% I'd be more comfortable if this game was at Coopers, and I'd have some more confidence knowing that they've got the home support and we've got a fairly good record at home to get us over the line.
It was a 3-1 defeat at Redcliffe the last time they played in Queensland back in January as well. For Brisbane, though, what do you think their biggest strength? As an Adelaide fan, what do you think what about Brisbane most worries you?
I think they've got a really poor defensive unit. I think I'm worried about finding a way to break that down when our attack hasn't been brilliant in recent weeks. Is relevant. We've sort of not been able to make the most of our advantages, and against a really strong defensive Brisbane Raw defensive unit, I think that's a massive concern for me. And then there's the likes of Dylan Wentz can just pop up with a goal out of nowhere. So it might even be we dominate the game for periods, just can't find the back of the net, and then someone like Dylan Wenzel-Halls can pop up with a goal, and then we're in real trouble. So yeah, I think that's the big concern for me.
All right, mate. So what's your tip and prediction for this one? Who's going to win and why?
I have to back him, don't I? Yeah, look.
Well, you don't.
I feel like I do as a Reds fan. I've got to back him in. Look. I'd say it's more likely than not Brisbane do get up, but I guess I have to say if we do, we might sort of get 1-0 up and then sort of find a way to break the deadlock, and then that might open the game up a bit. But I feel like if we do, it's going to be a finding a way to get through on a 1-0 sort of away from home result. So yeah, that's the way I see it. But look, if Tommy Urich and Craig Goodwin and the likes can bring their best, then anything can happen. But I think if we get through, it'll be like a nice 1-0 sort of real cagey affair again. So
yeah, 1-0, nice and nerve-wracking. I'm going to go the other way. I think it's going to be Brisbane Raw who get the job done. I think they're going to win 2-0. I reckon a Riku Danzaki brace either side of half-time will get Brisbane over the line. I think they will win 2-0. But, mate, I'm just looking forward to seeing how this plays out. Of course, the lowest ranked winner from those games will go on to face Melbourne City in the semi-final at Amy Park, lowest ranked being the team in the lowest position on the ladder, and then the highest ranked winner will go on to face Sydney FC at Jubilee Stadium. Last week, mate, on the reserve team podcast, we talked about finals football, whether we love it or we hate it, and I was very firmly on the finals in train. I'm a big fan of finals football. I think it's super exciting, and I am looking forward to a double dose of finals action this week, and I think it's going to be a great way to bring an end to what has already been a spectacular A-League season. What are you most looking forward to about? What are you most looking forward to about them?
Yeah, look, I think there's the joy of knowing anything can happen in finals. But hope it's nice to have my team in there as well. But I think it's just an exciting time of year. There's always quality of football on display, plenty on the line, teams going at it because this is it. They've worked so hard to be here, so they don't want to waste that opportunity now. Yeah, look, I'm just looking forward to it. Quality football all around.
Yeah, mate, I'm the same. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be an exciting time. It's going to be fascinating to see how it all unfolds. But, mate, that does bring us to the end of this week's episode of the Reserve Team podcast. Bill, if people want to find more of your content, where can they go to find you?
Yeah, just us being on Instagram, really. Bill.brooks_24. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
That's it.
Don't
And
expect too much, but
they can, of course, head to thereserveteam.com.au to find any of your content as well. You have been on previous podcasts as well. You can find those podcasts on our YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. It does make a difference. The podcasts are also up on Spotify as well. Make sure to like the Reserve Team on all your social media. We're on YouTube, we're on Twitch, we're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, pretty much everywhere. Give us a like, give us a follow. Make sure to head to thereserveteam.com.au as well for all things Australian and New Zealand football. We cover A-League, W-League, grassroots, kits, referees, absolutely everything you could imagine we have on our website. But that brings us to the end of this week's episode, everyone. Thank you very much for listening to this week's episode of the Reserve Team podcast.